G'day, I'm Stephen Page from Provan Family and Fertility Lawyers in Brisbane. This is the Australian Family and Fertility Law Podcast. Thank you for watching and listening. I've previously talked about surrogacy in Mexico, and this video podcast is an update. In essence, there have been two significant decisions of the Supreme Court of Justice of the nation, in other words, the Mexican Supreme Court, which have together significantly affected surrogacy in Mexico. I've talked in a previous video about a decision of the Supreme Court in July last year. In essence, the Supreme Court said, well, if you're going to be seeking an AMPARO order, and that's spelled AMPARO, which is, there's no direct translation from Spanish, but constitutional protection order, then you've got to make sure that the surrogacy agreement is fair. It can't be oppressive of the surrogate. And anyway, in the other video, I talk about that at length. One of the impacts of that decision and the extraordinary growth of surrogacy in Mexico, and to illustrate, a couple of years ago, there were about 20 surrogacy agencies operating in Mexico, mainly foreign owned. By my current estimate, there are about 60, again, mainly foreign owned. Rather than being a niche area, suddenly it's becoming more mainstream, so more lawyers are doing it, more judges are being exposed to it, and the result, when you put together with that decision from July, is that the time has blown out. So if we go back historically, my first clients going to Mexico for surrogacy were in 2014. It'd take about 7 to 8 weeks for Australians to leave Mexico with their child. It blew out slightly during the pandemic to 10 weeks. By comparison, the US State Department wasn't processing any passports and had a passport queue of 1.3 million that were outstanding. Mexico, 2 weeks, not bad, pretty good in the scheme of things. But currently, and this is March 2026, it's 10 to 16 weeks. So this is by far the slowest it's ever been for Australian intent parents to leave Mexico. Having said that, colleagues in Mexico, and certainly a couple of them that I've talked to, have taken efforts to speed up processes in Mexico. And it's now likely, in light of a decision of the Supreme Court in February this year, that that's going to be sped up further. The Supreme Court has said that there can be orders made before the birth of the child, basically monitoring the surrogacy arrangement, making sure that it goes smoothly. Now, my understanding is that these orders would be made in state courts, not federal court, because Mexico is a federation like us and they have both state and federal courts. Federal court is the one where you go to for AMPARO. So the jury's out about how this case will impact, but I think one of the things it will do is speed up the process. It looks like you can get a pre-birth order in a state court in Mexico, and it may be a preconception order, or in fact it may be both. I'm getting feedback from Mexican colleagues that some are still going for AMPARO orders post-birth, and feedback is also some aren't. It may vary depending on the lawyer and depending on where in Mexico, because again, federation practices can vary. But one thing that I'm sure that this is likely to do is speed up the process. Because if you're getting an order ahead of time saying, this surrogacy agreement looks okay, and then another order that says, the intended parents are the parents, then that's bound to speed up the process at the end. So that time frame currently of 10 to 16 weeks is going to shrink. What it's going to shrink to, I don't know, but we'll wait and see. Thanks for watching and listening. I'm Stephen Page from Provan Family and Fertility Lawyers, and this is the Australian Family and Fertility Law Podcast.